students, myself Kushal Pal Singh, and I am going to take programming data structure and algorithm using Python. The code is KME056 and we will start. Let us talk about the Python, a little bit introduction to the Python. It was designed by Guido van Rossum. It was introduced in 1980s but first appeared in 1991. There are so many applications related to the Python, and right now in the modern world it is increasing day by day. Some of the applications are web applications, artificial intelligence, machine learning, mobile application, game applications. Before we start with the Python, let us look at the general classification of a language. In programming, generally we have two types of languages. One is machine language, which is referred as low language or machine language. Generally, it is the most favorable for machines. The language as 0 and 1, or we can say the binary language, is related to low machine language. The next one is the high level language. Generally, it is for us. You can see in high level language, it is very convenient for the user to understand. Just like when we talk in English, that English is very familiar with us. So, we can easily understand, but with respect to the computers, it is very, very high. So, that is why it is referred as high level language, and the Python is considered one of them, that is this one. Even the other examples are like JavaScript. Yes. Next one is, before introducing to the Python programmings, first we need to differentiate between a compiler and an interpreter, because generally these are the two windows by which a programming can execute itself. The first one is the compiler. You can see in the compiler that the source code is converted into the machine codes. Machine codes means zeros and 1, or you can say the binary 1. But in the interpreter, you can see the execution of the codes are directly. What's more, in the interpreter, you can see the executions of the codes can take by line. That means one line is executed, then the next one, and then next on. But in the compiler, you can see the entire code is converted first into the machine language and followed by the execution. It is just like an example, if you are painting a wall and in that you need to paint 5 types of colors. So, if you are coloring the whole area by the one color, that is treated like a compiler. But if you are putting the segments of the color one by one, it is like an interpreter work. What's more, in the interpreter, that the processing speed, the overall processing speed for the interpreter is quite slower as compared to the compiler. You can see the next thing, but the analyzing time in the interpreter is higher as compared to the compiler. What's more is that in the compiler, once the program code is executed or compiled, it does not require any more time for the source code. That means once it is compiled, the source code becomes useless, because in the compiler the file is generated with the reference to exe, and once the exe is generated, there is no other use for the source file other than this one. But in the interpreter, you can see that every time whenever you are going to interpret the language, you require that source code. That means every time the source code must be available while executing. Since the interpreter is doing one by one line command, it requires less memory. But whereas the compiler requires more memory because it is compiling the whole document first. The last point is very, very important here, related to the errors. You can see the all errors at a single compilation in the compiler. That means whenever the compiler is executing the file, it will collect all the errors and display at a once place. Whereas in the interpreter you can see it will instruct the moment it encounters your first error. Until and unless you solve that error, the interpreter cannot move forward. So, this difference is very, very important to understand the Python language first. Now, let us talk about some features of the Python. The very first, or the biggest advantage of the Python programming is it is an open source language. Open source means there is no restrictions of the rights. That means any machine can use, and it does not require any legal works from the other companies or the one that is providing the programming software for the Python program. But the next advantage of this one is it is a high level language. Now, you understand why the Python is a high level language? It is because it is very convenient for the users, or you can say at our end its language, or this language is very, very easy. We can understand the codes, and which will almost resembles to the English language. Though the most of the programming languages are very familiar with the English, but it is still a very close to the natural language. What's next is the easy code readability. It's coming from the high level programming language. The next point is very, very important. You can see the dynamically typed language. Here the variables are constructed at the moment they are encountered. Since the Python is a very high level language, the next thing is it is using the interpreter as a source to execute the code. That means the interpreter executes the codes one by one. So, here you can see it is referred as a interpreted language. Now, you understand the Python uses the interpreter, and due to the interpreter it is referred as the interpreted language or script language. Sometimes it is also referred with this scripting language. Since this language is very high level language, so the syntax are also very simple. Since it uses the help of the interpreter, in which the syntax are very, very simple. Last point is very, very important. You can see that the object oriented approach. The C language was generally not the object oriented language, but the C++ is the first object oriented language, and after that almost every languages are considered as object oriented language. So, here you can see they have the modular quantities. These quantities are themselves complete in themselves. Along with that, they can create a big thing. That thing is also complete itself. That means it is just like we are complete in ourselves, and along with our family we are again complete. Now, look at the difference, the programming language and scripting language. Just before this slide, you have seen that the Python is considered as a scripting language, but you can also say that Python is a programming language too. Generally, we are considering the Python as a scripting language because it uses the interpreter as a support. But if somehow you develop the compiler for the Python programming, then you can see that this language can also be as programming language. Next thing is very, very important, runs independently. Just like once the source code is executed, there is no further use of that source code in compiler, but in interpreter, every time the interpreter interprets those codes, it requires the source file, because it cannot generate and save the file in some formats. That is why the dependency is there much more towards the interpreter, that is the scripting language. Next one is incomplete code. The incomplete code means it requires the supports of other tools in order to run. But here the compiler supported language, that is programming language, it is complete in itself. because the programming language is a very big domain in which there is a sub part related to the scripting language. The next thing is the codes are complex in the programming language. Like in C++, the codes are little bit tricky, they are complex, but they can generate lots of varieties as compared to the scripting language, because the programming codes are totally independent. Once they are created, they are totally become independent. The next thing is, in the scripting language the codes are simple. As in the Python we have seen that the Python is a simple coded language, so it is coming from the scripting language. So since you are using the interpreter, it is taken as that the codes are very simple. Next one is the codes, the numbers of codes. For a particular work we required more codes in programming language, but in scripting language we require fewer codes. The last is very important, that here the more developing time is required. In the programming language the developing time is more because the codes are very large. The second is complexity of the codes is there, but in the scripting language you can see that those codes are very less as compared to the programming language. Now we are going to the Python programming, that is the KME 056, and it is a little bit coursework of this PDSA. So you can see that we are starting with the variables and the data types, in which we will talk of how the variables are created in a Python programming, followed by what are the different data types are available, followed by the operators, conditional statement, loop statement, functions. After functions you can see that there are 4 options: the range, filter, map and reduce. So these 4 functions are just like a sub part of the functions, but are in the application form. The next one is the list comprehension, file handling, and followed by some programs like the linear search and binary search, selection sort, insertion sort, merge and quick sort. Followed by the important, you can say it is a core of the Python programming, that is the classes and objects, because it is related with data structure. So you can see this topic is like a core to the Python language, the classes and objects, and followed by some of the data structures like linked list, stack, queue, trees, graph and so on. After that you will see a little bit about this asymptotic notations, in which we will encounter 3 types of notations, followed by dynamic programming and followed by some algorithms, because in our syllabus there is last word, that is algorithms. So we are dealing with some algorithms like the longest common sequence, matrix multiplication, GCDs, improved GSCs and some, yes, if we have some time then we will move on to this last segment, that is extra programs. Now we are starting with the Python. Now since Python is an interpreted language, we require some tools to support it or to execute the codes. In this I am using this Python IDLE. The IDLE stands for the Integrated Development Language Environment. So it is a total free open source, you can directly download it from the Python org site, and the name of this one is Python IDLE. So this is the link, this is one. So once you are clicking on this one, you can get this window, you can see here. So it looks like this, the white script board. So in this you are going to generate a new file and then we will proceed. Now here, once you have done the installation, you can also access the Python directly from the prompt command. There you just need to mention Python, or you can use the just shortcut is py. By using this py in the prompt command, but it must be open in the administrator. So here you can see in the prompt command, if py will be written, now this prompt command will be converted into again the same Python IDLE window, but through prompt command. You can check the version by using this one, Python space / version. Now we are starting totally basics from the Pythons, and here you can see the very first thing. If you want to print hello, you can directly write it in the command window like print hello world. Then you can see after enter you can see the output as a hello world. The one of the important thing here, it is not about the printing hello world, but about the extension of the file. Look at this one .py. Whenever someone is going to ask you what is the extension of the Python, it is .py files. So this py is very important, but before that dot is there. So .py, you can see the file name myfile.py, that means it's the Python belonging file. Now you can see when we open the Python IDLE, you can see we can click on the files. In this you can click on new file, and then this is how you can see the screen. Now this is the script language script file where we can write some codes to execute Python program. Now before that, the last important thing is the indentation, because in Python programming there are no brackets to define the boundaries of the codes, but in this the indentation is very important. The indentation means like white space. That means on the basis of this white space, the interpreter will interrupt that the code belongs to something or not, because here there is no brackets. So the indentation will help you to guide the compiler to whether this code belongs to this or not. Here you can see it is in the green. That means now the indentation is there. It is directly saying that with this spaces it belongs to this statement. Now it's little bit early to introduce this thing, but once we will reach at that topic, I will again introduce the indentation there. But look at this thing only, that here that there is some space in the code. So this space is referred as the indentation, but in the next program you can see that there is no space. That's why it is red. You can even check in the browser. Look at the white browser. You just need to mention the codes, and there you can see that there is some spaces, and due to that there is no error. It is directly executed. But what will happen when you are not putting some spaces? It will directly give you this error, that is the indentation error, because in Python the codes are separated, or you can say the boundary of the codes are defined by the indentation or the spaces. So like indentations are the starting block and the ending of a particular statements, just like conditional statements, for loops. So these require some block of code, functions also requires block of code. So these blocks of codes are identified by using the indentation. The next important thing is comment, because the comment is one of the extra information which will be displayed in the codes. So here you can see we can use the hash. Hash is the symbol which will provide you the codes for commenting in Python programming. So you can see the very first example. Here it is written by the hash. The hash represents one line comment line. That means if you are going for the multiple lines, you need to put the hash in multiple lines. So here you can see we have two statements, but in the first statement you can see the hash is there. So the first will not be executed. Why? Because it is considered as a comment. The advantage of comment is you can read the codes easily. The explanation of the codes are there. It also prevents the execution of the codes. That means once the compiler or the interpreter will encounter this hash, it will directly consider it as a command, and it will consider that this statement will not be executed. It is just for the display. The last thing is, of course, the testing of the codes can be done by using the comment. The second example also shows you that while declaring variables, you can see the extra information you are getting that the execution of the codes are defined here. The declaring variables, we are declaring two variables, a is equal to 10, x is equal to 25.5. So, here you can see in these two examples the codes, the comments are not executed. Even you can see in the program that this is displayed in the red, that means it is not going to execute itself, but yes, you will see the good morning. Just a little bit previous slides, you can see there was hello world. So, we can write by using the print in bracket, you can see this thing. Next thing is, if we need to do the multiple comments. One thing is, in every line you need to draw the hash symbols at the very start, or you can use this triple quotation marks. This triple quotation marks will represent you that it is a comment. So, look at this one. When we have 3 lines, we are putting these 3 quotations, hash, hash, hash. But we can also use this string, that is triple quotation, and once we are using triple quotation, you can see that it is considered as a multiple line comment. You can see in the window, here you can see that the codes are not executed, there is nothing, it is totally clean, because the triple quotation marks are there. That means these are considered as comments, the comments cannot be executed. Similarly, these 3 hash statements cannot be executed. Now, we are starting with the very important topic. The very first thing is that what are the variables in the Pythons, how the variables are defined, and what are the various data types are available to define the variables. So, the variables are like the container. You can just go in the kitchen, there are some containers which store some information, or you can say some foods. So, it is similar to that one, that those containers are basically storing the things together, but they are referred with the name. You can see with the name, because the naming of the variable is very, very important, because the name itself is the one which guide the compiler to execute. Just like when you are saying hello, so no one is going to listen, but if you are adding this statement like Ram hello, so Ram will, if will be there, then he will respond to you. So, while creating a variable in Python programming, you need to assign the values to that variable. This is the syntax for a variable. In this, the very first thing is the name of the variable, followed by the assigning operator, followed by the data. Now, these 3 things together will define you how the variable is put into the Python programming. Of course, this equal to symbol is considered as a assignment operator. What's more is that it is dynamically created. That means, on the spot, whenever it is going to execute the statements lines one by one, at that time only the variables are created. Now, the one thing arises, now this question, if you are not assigning the value to a variable, what will happen? Before that, you can see the syntax, the variable name is equal to data. That means, now look at the very first thing. Now, this is the name followed by the assigning operator followed by the value or data, that is 7. Similarly, b is equal to 10.0. You can see the third one, that is cat is equal to hello friends. So, here this hello friends is the data and the cat is the name of the variable. Similarly, you can see the head is equal to 2. This is also considered a variable. And the last thing is, you can see the last example, empty is equal to none. This is also a variable, because it is following the same syntax, the variable name followed by the assigning operator followed by the value. Now, we will move back toward this question. You can see what will happen if you are not assigning a value to a variable. Let us see. So, in this lecture, what we have studied is the difference between a compiler and the interpreter, a programming and a scripting language, and what are the various properties, or you can say what are the various properties of the Python programming, or the advantage of a Python programming. The last thing we have encountered was this thing, that whenever we are declaring a variable, the value must be there, otherwise this name error will attract the interpreter. With this, I will thank you to all.